Hey, today I'd like to talk to you about what is known as the Dunning-Kruger effect on small businesses. In a nutshell, the Dunning-Kruger effect is essentially a cognitive bias that all of us experience that makes us feel that we're overqualified or we overestimate our skill sets when we undertake a new endeavor. It comes from a research paper that was done in 1999 by two individuals, Dunning and Kruger from Cornell, and it basically talked about the unskilled and the unaware of that. And so what I really want to talk about is this cognitive bias of the Dunning-Kruger effect that is about creating unrealistic expectations about what it's going to take to accomplish something. This is obviously something that happens quite significantly in the small business realm where people begin to start a business. They believe it's oversimplified and they can simply go ahead and be successful very easily. And this is essentially what the Dunning-Kruger effect is all about. So what we do is we overrate our own skills and effectively underrate those skill sets of other people. And so it kind of follows this path where we start and we have this overinflated view, and we call that peak called Mount Stupid, where you are actually ignorant of a lot of things that are going on in your world, and you believe that you really do understand a lot of that. And the problem with it is because your brain is filled with a lot of irrelevant and misleading information that gives you an overconfidence that you can be successful. Now, one of the biggest ones that I see is failing to understand a specific industry. And this is prevalent in a lot of situations or businesses out there. Anybody who's familiar with a gentleman by the name of Adam Newman had a clothing company, and then he thought, you know what, I was successful in the clothing. Why don't I switch industries and get into real estate? And he created WeWork. Turned out to be quite a disaster. Or Greg LeMond, I believe is how you pronounce it. He manufactured toys, and he thought, well, you know what? If I can do toys for kids, I should be able to transfer that to the pet industry. He created Pets.com, which again was another failure. And so what we're talking about here is being somewhat ignorant of the market forces in that particular industry, because as an outsider, we simply look at it and say, oh, I see a market failure. We should just be able to have the solution go in there. But there's probably a reason why many of the entrenched people in that industry have not undertaken that type of a solution, because they're aware of certain things. And so basically being market ignorant. And so here you are on the top of Mount Stupid making a lot of bad decisions. Now, typically what happens subsequent to that is you begin to realize that your mistakes, and then you slip all the way down into what we call the valley of despair. This is where a lot of people have already spent some money and resources to bring a business to fruition, and then essentially they realize, oh my goodness, there are so many things that I don't know, and many of them bail on their business idea at that particular point. In some cases, that's a wise decision because it was probably a bad decision to start with, but in other cases, what we really do see is there is a point when you reach the valley of despair where you begin to see what we call the slope of enlightenment. As you begin to immerse yourself in that particular solution and you have the grit to keep going, for example, you'll begin to understand that particular industry and you'll slowly work your way out. Now, this has a lot of examples. I mean, for me, I do some real estate. It's on my portfolio or my profiles, and people see that and they say, hey, Steve, I read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I want to go invest in real estate. I see that you've done some real estate stuff. Teach me what you can know in an hour, basically. And I mean, what they don't realize is that really some of my real estate successes really come over the fact of doing 20 years of all kinds of things in real estate, from, the fix and flip industries to buying model homes from builders, to going ahead and building custom homes, to, moving into commercial real estate and all those other kind of things. These took 2 decades of my time to amass various knowledge about that particular industry. There's no way that reading a book or talking to me for an hour or two is going to impart all of that wisdom. We see this also in situations of freelancers. For example, I see a lot of people come out of college. They have some technical skills. They don't really have much in the way of business acumen, and they just are full of themselves and say, listen, I can go out there and I can make a business of that, because they're built up on this top of Mount Stupid, all this confidence that they effectively have, because they're just, this cognitive bias doesn't allow them to actually see a bunch of things. I also see this with investors too. A lot of investors, especially angel investors, maybe they've had a successful exit from a business, as we talked about earlier, those cases with, pets.com and WeWork and stuff like that, and they think they can just translate that into a new industry because they have the Midas touch, and in fact that doesn't necessarily always translates into new types of businesses. It also has a problem in the world of freelancing, in hiring as well, whereby people will view their own skills as being way up here, and anybody else who has an opposing view obviously doesn't understand it as well as I do, and then they discount any advice that they get there. So there's a couple ways to kind of overcome this bias here, and that is the value of a mentor. Somebody who doesn't have a dog in the hunt, who's been in a particular industry, for example, can impart wisdom unto a entrepreneur that they might not normally have. Having a series of network connections that exist outside are also very valuable, because those bring in and at least counsel from people to go in there. And then, of course, what I always tell people is make sure that you validate your business idea right out of the get-go, to make sure that you're following along the proper path. And so this is the effects that the Dunning-Kruger effect ultimately has on startups. I hope this was informational for you, and check out some of our other resources on SteveBizBlog.com.